Welcome. Thank you. I'm Shoto. I'm the Sukansu and the Shisui here at SokukoJi Buddhist Monastery, which means I help keep things going, trying to help with the programming and the property upkeep here. I just want to invite anyone who finds value in these teachings to please participate either by joining us for the Dharma talks from either Sokuzan or his monks, his students. Join us for any of the book studies throughout the week, even just one time throughout the week would be great to see you in our Zendo or to join us online. We could really use your help with your practice, joining us, and also financially to help us keep the programming going here. So thank you very much.
Good evening. Tonight's Dharma talk is on the sixth prohibitory precept. My name is Myoka, and I will be looking at how that has shown up for me. And please ask questions once I'm ready to take them, if I'm ever ready. The sixth prohibitory precept, as we practice it here at SokukoJi, just have to find it here. Sixth, and this is one of 10. I think everybody on here looks like they're familiar with these. Sixth, no dwelling on past mistakes. The way begins anew in each moment. And the opportunity to practice the way here and now is essentially unhindered by what has come before. To awaken again and again in the present and allow the past to fulfill itself naturally. In this way is no dwelling on past mistakes. The way begins anew in each moment. To awaken again, again and again in the present and allow the past to fulfill itself naturally. No dwelling on past mistakes. I think I'm going to read Kobin's version, which has some slightly different words. And this comes out of Embracing Mind, the Zen Talks of Kobun Chino Otagawa. Sixth precept, no dwelling on past mistakes. Self-nature is mysteriously profound. In the midst of unmistakable truth, not to speak of past mistakes is called the precept of no speaking of past mistakes. So what strikes me about that is the word speak. And in the paragraph following that I'll read now, he brings a little more light to that, particularly mentioning speech. The sixth and seventh precepts relate with the fourth precept. No illusory words. So there is no speaking of people's mistakes and misunderstandings, no praising yourself while you are feeling blame of others, and no praising others while you are blaming yourself. The spirit of this is thinking before speaking. The spirit of this is thinking before speaking or acting, and instead offering good actions, thoughts, and speech. These precepts are about words, the many sides of language. It is important to speak with fine timing and with truth from within. The true loving quality which appears with words is necessary if we wish to relate with other people. Since he mentions that fourth precept in here, I'll read that, or at least part of that. Fourth precept, no illusory words. Self-nature is mysteriously profound, unexplainable dharma. Not to preach one word is called no illusory words. So when we talk about the past, speak of the past, what is that? When Kobun is encouraging us not to speak of past mistakes. It seems like most of us go about our day speaking of things of the past out of memory. And one of the reasons I chose this, because I received this assignment very last minute. I had actually also been thinking about this precept and how it relates to something in John Klein's book, I Am. John Klein, who we've talked about here and who, in this book, this book was given to me by SokukoJi, and I read through it very quickly and have referred back to it again and again. On page 108, which is a memorable number, John seems to, or Gene, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, seems to refer to this precept, not directly, but in speaking of memory.
It's pronounced Juan.
Juan?
Yeah.
Jean?
But you haven't made a mistake.
Okay.
Okay.
Is he
No.
German?
No, I think it's French.
Finish.
What?
French.
Finish?
Finish.
Okay.
Finish.
Finish.
Yeah, finish.
Yeah, hurry up, finish. Okay, we're through.
I was just looking on the cover. It does mention Europe, but it doesn't say. So what he says is you want to solve a problem by finding an answer in the past, in memory, in what you know. But the past is composed of experiences based on pleasure, pain, hope, and all the other illusions of the ego. Free yourself from this pattern of desire and fear. All your problems derive from it. The solution to present problems does not lie in referring to your past, but in seeing the facts of the situation from the widest possible view. The ego is nothing but memory, a set of definitions which are limiting. You strongly believe in these patterns you have yourself brought about, and you mechanically repeat them. It is only habit that maintains them, makes them seem permanent. Let them go now forever. So in the dwelling on past, I'm not sure we can let that go forever. But the word dwelling seems to get at the difficulty and the repetition of believing the past and believing what's happened before, believing memories. And what's interesting, if you go back and look at those memories, can you actually have an accurate memory to dwell on or to base something on out of your past? He seems to be saying, John Klein seems to be saying that present problems do not lie in referring to your past. When we attempt to look at that past and bring something out of it, what triggers us to do that? It seems like we don't want what's showing up, or we want to repeat something that happened that we liked or we want to see again. So the second noble truth of wanting something different seems for me to bring about wanting to look at the past and mistakes, or possibly things that I think have gone right, and taking something from that and building something in my mind or in my actions that I think is correct, based on a whole lot of illusion of what I think happened before, and believing that that happened and that there's a way to correct or improve or retain, contain, repeat something that felt good. So I'm looking to alter, based on past mistakes, what's happening. And is there anyone that can alter what's happening? And John Klein says all memories are thoughts. And if we construct a thought out of concepts and events, feelings, and memories, it seems like we are buying into the illusion and dwelling on past mistakes or past appropriate actions. We attempt to create something better or what we think might be right out of that, when do we actually have any say-so in that? whether we're basing it on the past or not. So if something is occurring and we think we see a pattern from the past that's arising, is that anything we need to act on? Can we look at that and include that without believing those memories or those seeming patterns? And then the word itself, past, we go to the opposite, future. SokukoJi sometimes calls them the two thens. What happened then and what will happen then. And I'm paraphrasing. So if time is an illusion, whether we're dwelling on a past mistake or a memory or projected outcome from something we think we have learned or brought back from an old habit, if time is an illusion, all of that seems suspect. I think at this point I'll take some questions. Oh no.
Did you define mistake? What is a mistake? No dwelling on past mistakes. Bowing.
Thank you for that question. I don't feel like I did define it. It seems like there's some kind of fault finding that's happening in a mistake. Something went awry or didn't go the way we thought or projected that it might happen. Even accidents, things we can see we had no control over, we sometimes believe that as a mistake. Another word that comes up is mishap. We think there's a mishappening of what's occurring, and so we might call it a mistake, even though it's in that word itself, it's happening. We throw a miss on it, like there was something wrong with what's happening. It's a very curious area. SokukoJi.
So could you please differentiate in your understanding between just remembering mistakes that you've had and dwelling on them? What is the indication there of the word dwelling? What does it mean to dwell? Just remember that you did something, bumped into something over here, something didn't align right, and could be seen as a mistake or misunderstanding, but there was no real dwelling there. Could you say something more about that?
Yes. If we look at a mistake and notice how we bumped or tripped or something didn't go the way it seemed to have been going. It seems like that happens all the time. When we dwell on that, it seems to come out of the three poisons. I don't like, if I'm dwelling on it, it seems like I'm not liking something about the way that mistake happened, and I believe that this body person did something that could have been different. And I'm believing in the illusion, and I'm trying to push away that mistake, either through correcting what happened, maybe apologizing over and over to someone if I believe that that mistake caused them difficulty. And I think that dwelling may be ignoring or not including all the details of that mistake or whatever was arising at the same time. I may be focused very heavily on my piece, my part in that situation, and possibly other person's participation, when there are many things around it that I can't see, and I'm probably ignoring if I'm dwelling on it. SokukoJi.
So looking at these 16 precepts, we can kind of understand why some of them were created at past times. We don't really know who particularly, but lineage holders somewhere created these 16 precepts, prohibitory, and the grave precepts, and the pure precepts, and the refuge. So we can understand that. But what do you think the motivation was for that particular one, not dwelling? Was there some kind of big issue there with a lot of people who were, all the other things were going pretty well, but that dwelling on past mistakes, that was really a big one. Anything in that area based on your understanding of it?
The first thing that comes to mind is fixing things that happened in the past. And we think there's a way to fix
Mhm.
that.
Do you think this could possibly, in some cases, tie into the desire for revenge?
Yes, very much.
So the mistakes of someone else, perhaps.
Yeah, it feels like revenge can take the form of me going after somebody, or even whole countries going after other countries. And yeah, it seems like revenge could show up in many ways as a past mistake. Trying to think of the two families down south that have been going at it for centuries. Or Hatfields and the McCoys situation, where there were, it seems in the storytelling of what that was, there's no certainty on what occurred that created in a lot of that folklore anyway. It seems like there's not a certain distinction, or there's many stories around what the revenge is about, and who did what is not very clear after all the years, and ongoing new mistakes show up, or new reasons for revenge continue over and over again.
So how would you comment on, if I may, how would you comment on the mistakes of others in terms of this precept, dwelling on the mistakes of others?
Looks like it's none of my business. If I'm dwelling on somebody else's or my perception of someone's mistake, other than, oops, you dropped that, you better pick it up. You might be looking for those keys later. It seems in a practical way, there could be something perceived as a mistake that it would be helpful to note and to help someone with, but a lot of what shows up to me as somebody else's mistake looks like I'm just not probably seeing what that person's working with, and I have no idea, no way to know. Wanda.
Wonderfine, what is the difference between dwelling on the past or when the past colors our actions or our perceptions?
I think a lot of times there's no way to know what's coloring anything that's happening. And to go in there and try and figure out something coloring something else feels like dwelling to me. Like that feels like a lot of what happens in past mistakes. We perceive, project something on the illusion that's arising, and we color it a certain way, and then we dwell on it. And because of ignorance, a lot of times we don't even realize that that's coloring our perception or our actions. And I think if we notice that happening, we notice it and include that if something similar or something, it looks like something similar arises again. I don't feel like we need to get rid of it, but perhaps just, as Sokuzan says, be aware of the situation and how we want something different, how we want something else to happen, or how we might be coloring the situation in a very specific way and missing other aspects. Wanda.
Well, Divine, the other thing that comes up for me with this precept is how the past can hinder us. It's like our knowledge is limited. So, and our knowledge comes from our past. It's an accumulation of our past knowledge. So when you say, when it says no dwelling on past mistakes, I wonder if it could also be talking about or referring to, becoming aware of how our past limits us, our knowledge limits us. Can you say anything more in that vein? Does that resonate with you, Bowing?
Yes, and I think I want to look at what John Klein said again. There's something in there, just the way he talks about memory. Yeah, and it's one line that I underlined. The solution to present problems does not lie in referring to your past, but in seeing the facts of the situation from a widest possible view. So I think seeing that, we can see that, or just hear that our present problems, the solution is not in referring to the past, then it seems like we can watch ourselves turn to that and want to do that and include that, even if we do end up referring to our past and trying to work it out, something in the present or in the future through that. It seems like that gives us something to look at.
So I guess I was trying to expand the word past into just our knowledge, or replace past with knowledge. And our knowledge limit us.
Yes. Yes. Chokadawa.
Chokodao bowing. Can our identity get a credential from dwelling on past mistakes or not dwelling on past mistakes?
Did you say, can our identity get a, did you say credential? Yes. It seems like when we ball up into our person who we think we are with whatever attributes or past history of family, education, jobs, relationships, it feels like that all those experiences can take the form of a credential and throw us away from what's, take us into a rabbit hole away from what's actually happening or what information is there right in front of us in the situation. It seems like if we have a specialty, like in education, we're given a certain area of study and we work out of that area of study, say history, but history is faulty and we base what's happening now on that history without considering other areas, psychology, spirituality, science, then we could get narrowed down into a little box and miss a lot. Is there a specific area you were thinking of?
Chokodao bowing, not really, but another question came up. When we talk about ignoring or turning away from something, I'm wondering if you could talk about that as distinct from not dwelling. I guess I'm thinking if something continually comes up from the past, I might have a reaction of ignoring that or covering it up. Yet I'm not supposed to dwell on it. So is there something in that area for you?
I think in practice, I try to flash on that, as I've heard Sokuzan talk about flashing on things, either concepts or perhaps a intense feeling or a situation. I feel like I can dwell on it, but I could also just flash on that and not try to not see it or turn towards something more entertaining or more soft. It's hard when it's something that is knotted up inside of you that returns and it wants to bring you down into a narrow perspective. It seems like that can be hard to flash on. It's like you can flash right into and be stuck right in that. But something about, touching on that and perhaps flashing on it seems helpful in practice.
Thank you.
Shoto.
Sure, bowing.
we have that precept yet. When we formally receive precepts, we do the repentance. So how is that, the formless repentance? How is that different, or how does that work with don't dwell on past mistakes?
I think in reciting that, I don't know how anyone else feels when I hear that. Of course, especially when I hear someone who's receiving that recite it, I feel very emotional about it, but I don't feel like I conjure up any specific mistakes or difficulties in particular about the person. And even when I did it myself or have done it or read it myself, I don't necessarily go to events. If I do, I definitely don't seem to dwell on those. Whereas dwelling on a past mistake, as I read it as specific precept, it seems like I do that. I do bring up particular events in my mind, or I may do that. And I don't know why that is, how that, if it's the words or what in the repentance situation, the dynamic seems different. I don't know how than a mistake. And I think it's acknowledging mistakes or acknowledging the past. And I don't know why it doesn't seem to go to dwelling for me. Any questions online?
You bowing. What does it mean to dwell? And maybe you've addressed this a little bit, but what is dwelling, bowing?
I would say it's a dynamic of circularity, samsara, going around and around and around. When, as Sokuzan talks about it, it looks like a straight line, like we're going down a road and we're collecting things that are going to help us and make us feel better or help us continue doing well, when we end up just repeating the same thing over and over and over again. So dwelling seems very circular to me.
You bowing. That's interesting. I was thinking of it more as fixed, being fixated, but maybe the appearance of fixation is a circular act of the mind. I have another question. I was wondering, how do you look at this precept more as about your mistakes or as about others personally for you, Bowie?
I go more towards me and thinking about it now, I think that's because I feel like as far as receiving a precept, it seems like I'm looking here and if I start looking out there at what others' mistakes are, I guess it can be helpful in looking at that. But so far, it seems more helpful for me to relate to it through my own situation, because there's not a lot I can do or even know about how someone else's mistakes are showing up for them. If they're the other precept that Coben mentions in relation to this is the seventh, which is no praise or blame. So the way that shows up in mistakes, praising someone or blaming someone, or praising myself and blaming them, or having them blame me for things. I can be responsible or respond to that in at least in my own practice, looking at how that blame shows up if they're blaming me for something, and seeing what that looks like in a situation. Did I make something mistake something, or maybe I miscommunicated around that situation? So I think the precept, that seventh precept of praise and blame, then I tend to look at the mistake part of that, and perhaps more towards others in that precept than I do with dwelling on past mistakes.
Thank you.
And I think what you said about fixation, I do, besides being circular, I do feel that kind of tightening or narrowing feels like a fixed point that I'm trying to achieve or maintain. And that does feel like dwelling also.
You Dabang, I have another one.
Good.
So when Sokuzan says, I think he says, there are no mistakes. What is it we're really dwelling on? And how does that keep us from seeing our true nature, Bowing?
That feels like dwelling on kind of what Chokada was getting at with identity. Like if there is no personhood or identity, then what's dwelling on a past mistake? It kind of falls apart. And that seems to get in an area where just the dwelling part, even whether we think there's a mistake or not, if we're dwelling on anything, then it feels like there's somebody here dwelling that wants something else from what's occurring, regardless of whether it's a mistake or not. Whatever's showing up looks out of sorts or not what I want. So then I'm dwelling on that because I think I can do something about it. When it's all the whole thing is just made up. Chokadawa.
Chokudo bowing. It's also said that it's one continuous mistake, in contrast to Yuda's question. So I'm wondering if you can relate that to the precept.
One continuous mistake seems to say not being genuine or missing our life, as Sokuzan talks about. That's one way. Um, a continuous mistake could also point at the spontaneity that's happening, where anytime you think you know what's next, that's not it. That's a continuous mistake. It seems. It often doesn't seem like that in the moment. It feels like I'm not making a mistake, that I know what I'm doing. I know how someone should behave. I know the right way. So it doesn't feel like the continuous mistake. Although if I can go to the wall, that might show up later as the mistake, that it was dwelling on my idea of what the situation was. We have about 10 more minutes if there are further questions. Yunkai.
Okay, going in a very relative situation where I'm learning a new job right now. And I'm making a lot of mistakes. Could you recommend something for me to help bring this precept into that relative situation? Yeah.
I was gonna just say, just stop doing that. That might be too simplistic. Go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead. Your responsibility is starting with mine.
I would say returning, continuing to go back to the job. And because a lot of people quit, when they see that they're making mistake after mistake and they're uncomfortable. I don't know. I think it's up to you to see where you might want to put attention or tension on that situation to see how you might work with that. You receive the precept.
Isn't that job though full of a lot of new things you have to complete, new things?
Yeah.
It's just the cleaners, so it's simplistic in that way, but it's all of the things you have to do there. are complicated.
No, there is so much information
Yeah,
and just a whole different way that I'm using my brain that I'm not used to doing.
so help her. You're the teacher.
Well, relatively, I would say one thing at a time, you break it down, but um, I don't know how your mind works, so that's in a new job that has a lot of new things. I think I just try to simplify it down into the one thing at a time that I can look at. That's a hard because you're in a new situation. And I don't know if there's anything you're dwelling on from the past in that, or if it's just, yeah, I'm not sure.
Is that what you're asking? Is she bringing some kind of previous self-criticism into that job that isn't some kind of dwelling there going on possibly? Is that what you're asking her?
I hadn't thought about that, but
Oh, I did.
is that happening, Yunkai? Is there anything from the past that you're bringing?
That's the question I would have for you.
You can come by, I'm sure things are getting triggered,
Okay.
you know, you. Okay, 5 days on the job and I wanna do it perfectly.
So maybe it's the perfectionist thing, it's getting maybe a little trouble, because you've had so many different kinds of jobs, and you're so, not a compliment, but you're so skilled in so many different areas. You've accomplished different things, you've accomplished training dogs, and I can't even think of all the different things you're able to do, cooking, and I think the number one thing probably is house cleaning.
Cake decorating.
Cake decorating. So I guess that's what I'm just curious about it. Because I have to say, knowing you a little bit, it kind of surprises me that wouldn't be something you would just tune right into and, keep a notepad next to you or something and just get right in there and just figure out what everything is and be able to do it. So I'm a little concerned with what the fundamental issue is there.
I do have a notepad,
Okay.
I forget to refer to it,
Oh, do you have a notepad to remind you about the notepad?
no,
Okay, now we found the problem.
but I also am experiencing a different type of personality that's training me.
Oh,
So-
there's the mistake.
So I'm putting blame that way,
Yes, that's,
and I'm also putting blame this way.
yeah, probably both ways, yeah.
But it seems to be very, because I want to show up as being good and
Good.
capable,
Good and capable.
and I'm
Is-
kind of
is
at
this
times floundering.
Is this person verbally criticizing you in that way, or is she just is it a she, I take it?
Yeah. We just have a very different way of communicating.
Yeah.
I feel it's been difficult for kind of both of us to gauge what.
Yeah. Thank you. Very interesting.
At least you're not jumping out of planes. And-
But I can do that. That's the other one. Yeah.
Those details
that.
are very
Did you tell her no,
important.
you should do that? That's something you can mention, say what you're asking me to do there is a little bit more difficult than jumping out of airplanes, which I have 100 jump or 200 jumps out of planes. And you could say, have you done that? What I thought there was.
You can come out and I'm forgetting how difficult that was for me though, when I was learning that.
Yeah, I bet it was.
And it wasn't just like, oh, I was like, oh, yay, I can do this after 5 jumps. It was jump after jump after jump after jump
believe it.
after jump after jump after jump.
I jumped once. That was it. Jumping. I learned. I know what it's like.
I think it took me about 70 jumps to really feel
Like it was something you knew how to do and
that I was building confidence.
confidence.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. That's a good area to reflect on. How you've learned that and this would be more than the job. It sounds like it'd be more the interaction with the which is this the boss?
The
person?
owner,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, the supervisor. Yeah, that could be your main issue if you're working for this cleaners down the road this way. It might be a different story. Together.
Well, I guess we're ready for our last question, if there is one. Yunkai.
Okay. So in looking to the past, as you were talking about there, just that little exchange that we had, can it at times be helpful to us?
Yes. Well, in terms of acquiring new skills and seeing how those might line up with something we already know and how we learn, the way we learn. I think of learning languages. Once you learn a language, or at least once I had learned one language, then the next time I learned it, I had some skills or some ways of organizing my information so that as I repeated it, I retained more, or it seemed to help me retain it more. So I think it is useful. I mean, we have a memory for a reason. And with many things, Soku-san says you don't have to get rid of it. Just keep looking at it. So I think that applies to new jobs and skills also. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. We will stand and dedicate the merit.